Many people ask why I've been looking so haggard lately, as if it's because of prolonged insomnia. Why do I flinch every time the kitchen cabinet door creaks open by itself? And why, in my early 30s, do I have gray hairs on my temples? So, listen to this creepy story. You will probably laugh incredulously, as many people I have tried to tell my fear to have done. It wasn't too long ago that I would have loved to join you myself. For example, a couple months ago, sitting in a light-filled kitchen in the evening with a glass of brandy in my hand, I was laughing embarrassedly and falsely with friends about my story. And now I don't know what to do. Cry or laugh. Every morning, standing in front of the mirror, I check how many gray hairs I've added during this nightmare night. I've been afraid to sleep for a long time. Or rather, I'm afraid of waking up in the middle of the night, awakened by the soft creak of the door, and a muffled voice calling my name from the dusty depths of the closet. It all started about 2 years ago. At that time, another major project was nearing completion in our firm. As usual, we didn't meet the deadline, and we had to return home almost at midnight. Completely exhausted, I could only drink a bottle of beer and, without waiting for the end of the evening news, went to bed. I never complained about sleep, especially at times like this. The alarm clock was supposed to ring at 6 sharp, so that by 7:30, I could finally get out of bed and start another hard day. But I had to wake up much earlier. My eyes remained closed, and for a while I couldn't figure out what the reason for my sudden awakening was. Suddenly I felt that there was someone in the room. I could now say with certainty that someone had been here. At the time, it was only a vague sensation that was hard to put into words. As I lay facing the wall, on the very edge of the couch, it seemed to me that someone was standing behind me in the very corner of the room. On the one hand, I couldn't know if someone was there, but I couldn't see anyone either. Yes, I couldn't. There was no sound coming from the corner, and yet in some unknown way I felt the presence of some unknown being. I can guess what you're trying to say. This is what all the psychiatrists who have counseled me on this subject have told me.
Many people sometimes have this feeling. They feel like they can feel someone's eyes on them behind their back.
And so on and so forth. If that was the end of it, I'd gladly agree with you. But there were footsteps. After standing near the cabinet for a few seconds, as if to let me know that someone else was here, he headed for the kitchen. His gait was not cautious. The unknown man apparently felt like a host, and didn't even try to hide his presence. It was the footsteps of a lonely man who suddenly needed to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. The sounds were quite distinct, but I didn't hear them in the sense that people usually do. I felt footsteps. It seemed to me that the sounds bypassed my hearing organs and went straight to my brain. Witnesses describing experiences of telepathic communication claim that the voice of the interlocutor sounds right inside their head. In the same way, I felt the presence of this being. The footsteps seemed to be born in my brain, and at the same time I could imagine where they were coming from. In the same way, I felt, rather than heard, the flick of the switch in the kitchen. There was no fear at that moment. It came later, when the creature's visits became more persistent and regular. That first time, there were only a few faint knocks from the kitchen, as if someone were rearranging dishes left on the table. Then the switch flicked again, and the footsteps returned to the closet. And then there was a sound that would haunt my nightmares for the rest of my life. The quiet creak of the closet door closing in the middle of the night. I lay there for a few minutes, waiting for it to continue, but all was quiet. Only the alarm clock ticked quietly, and a car alarm howled somewhere very far away. Finally, having convinced myself that it was all a dream, I calmed down. In the morning, the incident seemed trifling and ridiculous. Busy with work, I practically forgot about the incident and only remembered it 2 months later. That day I came home from my friend's house quite late, a little drunk, hurriedly threw off my clothes and went to bed. As you might guess, I woke up long before dawn, which in my condition was quite surprising. The sound of water running from the faucet came through the closed bathroom door. I didn't even pay attention to him at first. The alcohol was doing its job, pulling me into a sleep filled with fragments of dreams. In the morning, most likely, this incident would have been forgotten, like all the previous ones. God, how naive people are. The dream was ready to welcome me back into its welcoming embrace when suddenly there was a low splash, like someone washing their hands. I held my breath and listened. The splash was repeated, and then the sound of the pouring water went silent. I felt someone turning the faucet, though of course I didn't hear it. It was a strange sensation. Then the door opened. Damn it, I'd swear on anything. I could make out a dim light through my tightly clenched eyelids. The switch clicked, and for the first time, fear crept deep into my heart. I used to reassure myself that all the sounds were coming from upstairs or downstairs from the neighbors, even though our house was old, with thick brick walls. If there were any sounds coming through the thick walls, they were too faint. Of course, my half-asleep mind could amplify those sounds in the silence of the night, but when the light switch flicked, I knew it was happening in my apartment. Because I heard another sound. It was very faint, at the limit of audibility, but unmistakably recognizable. The thing is, the broken spring in the switch near the bathroom rings every time you press it. This ringing is very quiet, and if you don't pay attention to it, you probably won't hear it. At least not during the day. But now, at night, in the absolute silence, with not a sound coming from the street, it sounded quite distinct. I'm sure I heard the sound of the spring in the switch. From the bathroom door to the entrance to the bedroom was literally a few steps. And after taking those steps, the unknown person froze on the threshold. Describing the previous incident, I forgot to mention that the sounds of footsteps were quite strange. Not quite human. The feet slapped the floor as if the person walking was wearing flippers, and at the same time not too loud. Just a quiet smack, smack, smack. But I'm pretty sure just a barefoot person doesn't walk like that. Stopping at the entrance to the bedroom, it froze for a moment. I imagined it looking at me. Then, after a few languid seconds, the footsteps headed toward the closet. The door creaked twice, something rustled inside, and finally everything went quiet. Thank God I'd been drinking that night, or I wouldn't have been able to sleep until morning. But drunk as I was snoring in a few seconds, forgetting my fear. To be continued.